What's going on, guys? Welcome in. Farzin Vasugian here with you for another episode of the Red Friday live chat. Hope you're all having a great Friday. It is March. We are getting further and further away from the damn cold. Yeah, man. Here we are, another episode of the Red Friday live chat, as we are less than a week away from the new league year, and that means we are also less than a week away from the free agency period opening up, the negotiating phase, the negotiating period, I guess, the period where you don't get in trouble for what's that term called that the NFL uses? Tampering. The non-tampering period opens up. That's happening very soon. But let's be completely honest here. I mean, these deals are made beforehand. You're obviously seeing trades get made before, and the Chiefs have made several trades before the new league year. Trading for Alex Smith, and then trading away Alex Smith, trading away Marcus Peters, trading away Joe Thuney. I mean, the Chiefs have been very active before free agency has ever kicked off here. So we've seen this before. Listen, a lot of these deals get made at the combine. A lot of situations where, because it's not just, hey, coaches, scouts, GMs are there, and let's watch all these incoming rookies training everything. It's not just that. Agents are there as well, and that is a perfect time for these general managers and head coaches, if they need to get involved, to have conversations with these agents who are there. So a lot of these deals, because I'm telling you right now, as soon as the free agency period opens up next Wednesday, 3 p.m. Central Time, you're going to see a lot of deals get signed and officially announced right away, because these deals were essentially agreed upon before the new league year. A few of them are well-kept secrets. Some of them are not well-kept secrets. I mean, obviously, you're seeing trades happen. None of these trades can be official until the new league year. Obviously, the big one that's happened so far is Joe Thuney leaving Kansas City, traded to Chicago. And I think the aftermath of the Joe Thuney trade is kind of where we're at right now. And people trying to figure out, what is this offensive line going to look like? Where if you're not going to pay Joe Thuney, or at least, pay him for what he was supposed to make in Kansas City, that's going to free up a lot of cap space. They still have work to do, and I'm sure they'll get that done. Probably going to happen at the 11th hour. What do you do? Does this put you in position to get a guy like Cam Robinson or Ronnie Stanley or more? I think Stanley seems to be the popular name out there that the Chiefs are gonna get, because only two teams use the franchise tag, the Chiefs and the Bengals. Obviously, the Chiefs use it on Trey Smith, and the Bengals use it on T. Higgins. And I do want to get into the Bengals later on, because I do think they're the most interesting team going into free agency, as there's a lot of news surrounding them, and they're kind of facing a lot. Bengals fans are not doing too well right now, but we'll get into that later. This whole thing with Kansas City tagging Trey Smith, he's obviously going to cost you a lot. He's a younger guy. He just had his best year in his 4 years in the NFL. When you look at all of those things right there, Kansas City just decided to go with the younger guy and trade Joe Thuney. He's in his mid-30s, going to be 33 in November, I believe. So he'll be approaching the tail end of his career as he is heading to Chicago. As far as who plays left guard, though, I think when you look at some of the options that Kansas City might consider here, a big one that's put out there is Kingsley Suamataia. Is Kingsley Suamataia someone who you guys have a lot of confidence in playing left guard for you? Obviously, left tackle did not work out very well. And by the way, I see a lot of you guys are coming in here. Welcome. Appreciate you guys. Comment below. And yes, I see a lot of you guys commenting about the Raiders. We will get into the Raiders shortly, as there was some breaking news about an hour ago, as it looks like they've got their new quarterback for 2025, and I'll jump into that shortly. But as far as who plays left guard, where is your confidence level in Kingsley Suamataia converting from left tackle to left guard? Because he didn't do a good job at left tackle. And in fact, the complete opposite. He was terrible at it. Is there any possibility that he gets kind of like a change of scenery when you go from one team to another? Maybe that helps. We hear that get thrown out there a lot, but a lot of times those things don't end up happening. But is a change of a position for Kingsley Suamataia going to help him? I don't know, man. Listen, I like Kingsley Suamataia's run blocking abilities. Those are really good. But as far as pass blocking go, I mean, that's what they need out of you. If you're not a good run blocker, I mean, that's a problem. But the Chiefs can live with that. If you cannot protect Patrick Mahomes, then we're going to have some problems here. The front office is going to have to look at some other options like they did all year long with the left tackle spot. They've been doing that since they cut Eric Fisher. But I'm just looking around with the left guard spot. And obviously, Joe Thuney is going to be hard to replace. But if there's one guy that I think the Chiefs might have a diamond in the rough, I do think it's Hunter Norzad. I really do. Hunter Norzad was drafted as a center last year for the Chiefs. And in that draft, in that draft, actually, they also got CJ Hansen in day 3, a 7th round pick. We didn't see much of Hunter Norzad during the season, but we got to see him play a significant amount in the Week 18 game against Denver. We saw the Chiefs starting offensive line out there. Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, Joe Thuney, Caliendo, one named Morris, I believe, was the right tackle because Jawan Taylor was hurt. Those guys only played one series, and that was a 3-and-out. So after one series, the starters come off the field. DJ Humphries plays left tackle for the remainder of the game, and that was a good opportunity to give him, but unfortunately, he didn't do very well. And then you had Hunter Norzad playing center there. And I believe they gave Mike Caliendo the left guard snaps just to give him more opportunities and more experience before the playoffs got underway. Hunter Norzad, his snaps as a center were low, but as far as his pass blocking abilities, I liked what I saw from Hunter Norzad. I think that guy can actually play guard for you. I really, really do. I do think that in this draft, Kansas City is going to have to look at the guard position. And listen, let's not forget, they drafted Laurent Duvernay-Tardif in the 6th round, and he ended up being a starter for 4.5 seasons. One of them, I know he suffered an injury, so he only played really half the games that year. Then they also got Trey Smith, also in the 6th round. He has been a 4-year starter and has been playing at an all-pro level. So Kansas City does seem to find some good offensive guards, interior offensive linemen, in the later rounds of the draft. I know Zach Fulton was the guy who they had a little bit. Not necessarily, Fulton was not necessarily an all-pro type of football player, but was serviceable, was good enough for you considering he was a day 3 draft pick and played a lot of games for Kansas City, was a day 1 starter. I think both Fulton and Duvernay-Tardif were day 1 starters, if I recall correctly. So this front office does do a good job of finding offensive guards in later rounds. The offensive tackle position is one that they've just gotten wrong for a long, long time. So hopefully they can figure that out. I mean, they drafted Wanya Morris a couple of years ago. They drafted Kingsley Suamataia last year. Neither one of them have really worked out. You'd like to think out of all these left tackles you keep bringing in, DJ Humphries, Orlando Brown, Donovan Smith, you'd like to think somebody is going to step up, but we haven't really seen that. I know Forbes put out an article that was done. It was an Enterprise story, as a matter of fact, where Donovan Smith was dealing with some sort of an injury, and that's why he did not play last year, which is understandable. But if that's the case, why was he? It just seemed like on social media he was trying to reach out to the Chiefs for his services. By the way, I see you guys in the comments. Please keep the questions coming. I appreciate you guys, especially during the off season. Though I will say right now, there's a lot to talk about, so there's really no struggle for finding topics to discuss. But be sure you guys comment below with questions, comments. I've got some things I want to get off my chest, and then I'll get to you guys. But I think Hunter Norzad, my prediction, unless the Chiefs go and get someone, and I see the comment about Tevin Jenkins, yeah, I mentioned him as a possibility as well. I kind of wonder if the Chiefs do keep that left guard competition in-house, because I think Hunter Norzad could be kind of an under the radar guy who could be good for you at left guard. Trey Smith, I do think they're going to come to some sort of an agreement. You're not going to trade away Joe Thuney and then trade away Trey Smith. That's not happening. Unless someone's going to give up something unrealistic for Trey Smith, which again is unrealistic. It's a hypothetical. You don't trade Joe Thuney to trade Trey Smith also. You trade Joe Thuney to free up cap space, which you're going to do soon with Patrick Mahomes' contract, I would assume. Maybe Taylor, I'm not sure. And then you can sign Trey Smith to a big deal. The Chiefs did put the tender on punter Matt Araiza and left guard Mike Caliendo. I think Caliendo is certainly someone that they would maybe reconsider, but also could have for depth purposes. As far as Matt Araiza goes, obviously he had a lot of hype coming in, being the punt god and whatnot. But let me just say this, because I'm seeing a lot of Chiefs fans push back against this franchise tender. Guys, last year was essentially his rookie year. I mean, 2 years ago was technically his rookie year, but the Bills cut him and he was going through that case, that investigation, which they found was no wrongdoing occurred from Matt Araiza's end. But as far as Araiza on the field goes, I mean, that was his rookie year this past season. It was. Got a great leg. Has a great cannon for a leg. He absolutely does. But he's got to learn to maybe be better with some of the directional punts and also pinning teams down in their own territory there. I think, and I'm looking this up real quickly. I know we don't ever talk about punting stats, but I think he led the NFL in touchbacks. Yeah, he did. He tied Michael Dixon of the Seattle Seahawks for most touchbacks this past season with 9. So that definitely needs to be improved upon. And he had 62 punts. So didn't punt as much as some punters out there. You definitely want to drop that number. Yep. Araiza was 16th in the NFL in punting. In total punts he had, excuse me. So yeah, you definitely considering you had not a lot of punts, again, 16th in that category, so right down the middle, you definitely need to improve on that kind of thing. So hopefully, listen, Dave Toba is the special teams coordinator, so I trust that they figure that out with him this offseason in training camp and going into the following season. So I hope they can certainly figure that out, because I do think Matt Araiza is good for Kansas City for sure. Okay, I want to get into the Matt Castle story. For those who don't know, Matt Castle shared a really wild story between him and Todd Haley in Kansas City. If you have not heard this, I'll give you guys the details. This is actually really wild. This is actually worth revisiting. Listen, it's March the 7th. It's the offseason. Yes, we have topics to discuss today, but that kind of thing, boy, I have some thoughts about that 2010 season and the Todd Haley era, and I'll get into that shortly. But I do want to get into the breaking news that came out tonight, where the Raiders acquired quarterback Geno Smith from the Seattle Seahawks, giving up a third-round pick to get him. Man, I still remember Geno Smith was almost a Chief. Remember that in 2013? Where the Chiefs had the number 1 pick, and they did not know what they were going to do. They ended up trading for Alex Smith, so instead of drafting a quarterback, they go and draft Eric Fisher, who we were just kind of talking about earlier. And Geno Smith doesn't even get drafted in the first round. Only one quarterback got drafted in the first round, and that was E.J. Manuel. E.J. Manuel was briefly with the Kansas City Chiefs during the offseason. Then he retired that same offseason after a few practices. So that was interesting. It's odd. The Chiefs have had some notable quarterbacks come to Kansas City during the offseason. I don't know if you guys remember Terrell Pryor. He was supposed to be kind of like a Vince Young, Mike Vick style quarterback. Maybe not as fast as Mike Vick, but you get the idea. And I remember him tweeting, "Oh, great day of practice." And he took a picture of the practice facility or something. And then he got cut the next day. I'm like, damn, cold business, man. And it was the offseason too. But anyway, Geno Smith to the Raiders. Well, better than Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, but that's not saying much. I mean, you could get Sam Darnold, and that would be a better option than Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. What's the Raiders' plan realistically? Because I see Max Crosby tweeted And I know Crosby got a massive deal, which probably has a hand in Trey Hendrickson possibly leaving Cincinnati. But Max Crosby's stoked. Why? Like, what are you excited about? You didn't get Joe Montana. You got Geno Smith. Like, if they somehow got Josh Allen or Joe Burrow, yeah, celebrate, man. Talk about how you have a great chance to finally win the AFC West and finally win a playoff game for the first time in 23 or 22 years, whatever it is. But what is the LFG? Like, what are we excited about here? We're talking about Geno Smith, which, okay, is this improvement for the Raiders? Yeah, anything is improvement. Matt Castle coming out of retirement would probably be improvement for the Raiders at the quarterback position. But you go from bottom tier team to mid tier at the best. I think they're just below average now. And you're going to put yourself in a position where you might not have a great draft spot for next year. And listen, I've always said many times, draft placement is completely overrated unless you need a quarterback. And obviously not every single year. I mean, listen, we saw Patrick Mahomes got passed on by 10 teams, including the Bills, who traded the 10th pick to Kansas City. But I'm just looking at the draft order right now. It's Tennessee, who needs a quarterback. Cleveland needs a quarterback. Giants need a quarterback. I think I saw Charles Davis. He thinks that Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, and Jackson Dart, I think, are going to go 1, 2, and 3 in the draft. I don't think that happens. But you got 3 teams ahead of you that need a quarterback. New England has Drake May. Jacksonville has Trevor Lawrence. So of the 5 teams ahead of you, the first 3 absolutely need a quarterback. So I don't think the Raiders, if we're being realistic, they're not going to get a quarterback in the draft unless they trade up. Or unless those teams ahead of you, Cleveland and New York, they don't feel strongly about whoever might be available between Sanders and Ward, whichever one is not drafted number 1 overall. I know there's a lot surrounding who was it? Cam Ward, who didn't throw out the combine. And I think there was one executive who anonymously said that he didn't like his arrogance or something like that, which I thought was very interesting. But I don't know, man. I'm just not sure. Like real talk here. I'm not trying to poke fun at the Raiders or anything. What is the realistic expectation if you're the Raiders? And I don't want any of this. Everyone is 0-0 right now. I don't want any of that bullshit. Okay. Seriously. I know it's March the 7th. So it's early. But let's not act like we know for the most part who's going to be good and who's not going to be good. I mean, if everyone, and you don't have to be an analyst like on ESPN to do this, if you're going to give me the 16 teams that you think are the top 16 teams and the bottom 16 teams, you might miss on a few of them. We always get surprised here and there by some teams. I think it's safe to say the Minnesota Vikings were that major surprise this past season. As far as the good side, the bad side, I think San Francisco, even without Christian McCaffrey, because Mason was running pretty well, that was a surprise. Dallas was a surprise to some, I would imagine. But in general, it's like you can still project who the top 16 teams are going to be and the bottom 16 teams, and you'll get a majority of them right. The Raiders would be on every single person's bottom 16. And I know Raider Nation, they're passionate and all of that. But realistically, what a Raiders fan, like if a Raiders fan was forced to bet $100 on the Raiders being a top 16 team or a bottom 16 team, and you got to bet this money so you can win, you're probably putting it on bottom 16. Now, I will say with Geno Smith, they are kind of a middle of the road type of football team, but is that good enough to get you into the playoffs and win? I don't know. I don't even know if that's good enough to get you into the playoffs. Because remember, you're in a division that has Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't need to tell you guys about it, but even if you guys were not Chiefs fans, we don't need to elaborate on that. You also have the Denver Broncos, who I think with Bo Nix, who had a tremendous rookie season, I think Bo Nix is going to take that big second-year leap. I really do. And I think the Denver Broncos are going to be a much competitive football team in 2025. And you also have the Chargers, who look like they're moving in the right direction with Harbaugh. Obviously, some things they still got to work out, but they're moving in the right direction, I would say, especially when you consider how they finished the year before, firing their coach before the end of the season, all kinds of mess and drama for the Chargers in 2023. So if you're the Raiders, how does Geno Smith help you? Other than no longer being a bottom tier football team. Like, how do you compete in the division with Geno Smith? Obviously, Max Crosby thinks it's going to work out because he's posting LFG on his social media. But I don't really know what we're LFGing with Geno Smith. Like, where are we going with Geno Smith if you're the Raiders? What's the realistic end game here? Because I don't see it at best above 500. And I know we don't have 500 football teams anymore because we have 17 games, though it might change to 18 soon. But they're kind of a 500 bubble team. That's how I see the Raiders. That's the type of football team they are. So if you're going to be a 500, close to 500 team this season in 2025, well, in 2026, when you're going to say, we might need to go get another quarterback, you're going to be way down in the draft. I mean, you're going to have to give up a lot of things to move up in next year's draft. I still think the Raiders need to consider a quarterback in this year's draft, but I don't know if realistically they can get, because I think Sanders and Ward are the only two viable first-round draft picks. Outside of that, I guess we just got to wait and see. But that is the big news tonight. Geno Smith traded to the Raiders. I get it, Raider Nation. He's better than Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew combined. But how much better are we talking about here? I will say, if the Raiders can be aggressive and get in on the Tyler Lockett deal or trading for DK Metcalf, that would help. I mean, if we're really creating a Seattle reunion in Vegas, I suppose those players would be the guys to bring in. If you're the Raiders, they've got the money for it. So start spending some money. Okay, I want to quickly go to this Matt Castle, Todd Haley story. For those who may not have heard it, Matt Castle on his podcast opened up about his co-host was asking him, what's like the weirdest thing you've ever done in a game or the craziest thing that's ever happened to you? I don't remember the exact question, but boy, Matt Castle shared quite a story here. He talked about a blow up that he had with Todd Haley on the sidelines. I think it was a week 16 game against Tennessee in 2010. That was a good season for Kansas City. They won 10 football games after winning 4 the year before in Todd Haley's first year. Todd Haley's second year was 2010, to be clear. And they beat the Titans in week 16 in a blowout, and they won the AFC West. Now, even though that was a blowout win for the Chiefs to win the division and advance to the playoffs, which was a disaster, that game came with some drama. So here's what happened. According to Matt Castle, he took a sack at one point in the third quarter. Todd Haley was not happy about that at all. So he basically lashes out at Matt Castle on the sidelines. Matt Castle tries to respond a little bit rationally and says, "Hey, Todd, we don't need this right now," basically telling him to calm down. Apparently, Todd Haley did not like that. So he shouted back at Matt Castle and said, "F you, Castle, you're benched," according to Matt Castle. So Brody Croyle goes into the game for the Chiefs, and he throws an interception. And Matt Castle is told he's still benched. So the Titans have the football. They punt it back, which, by the way, the score of that game was 34-14. So when you win a football game 34-14, that's a really good football game. I mean, it sounds like everything went right for you. In fact, I believe that is Matt Castle's second best game in terms of passing yards. So Matt Castle got benched at one point in this game, didn't throw some, was on the sidelines, and there was still some drama in that football game. But anyway, Castle, when the Titans punt the football back, Castle decides to take matters into his own hands. He walks back to the field. And I think Brody Crowell was trying to get back in also, but Brody didn't really know what to do, so he just stood on the sidelines. And according to Castle, no assistant coaches are calling plays into his headset. Not from Todd Haley, not from Charlie Weiss, nobody. So he's calling his own plays, and I guess Jamal Charles had a nice run for a first down, and the Chiefs finally got going, and they really needed to get something going because their offense had been stagnant for a few drives at that point. And Castle says he finally started to hear the coaches send in the play call to his helmet in his earpiece. And the Chiefs went on to beat the Titans 34-14. Castle threw for 314 yards. That is the second most in a game that year. And even though the score was good, that was Castle's one of his best game in terms of passing yards. There was still a lot of drama in that game. Here's my thing. And by the way, 2010 was like a really special year, I thought, for the Chiefs. I'll say this because I started this podcast in 2007. So in terms of podcast coverage, I did not know what a winning season was until 2010. So 2010 was actually a really fun year to do the podcast because Lord knows we did not have a lot of seasons that year where we got to talk about wins on the podcast. That was a long time ago, by the way. 15 years ago, hard to believe. But 2010 was a fun year. I'll never forget how that season opened up. It was Monday Night Football late at night. The Chiefs had the second Monday Night Football game in week 1, and the Royals just played across the street earlier in the day. So it was one of those 2-for-1 specials. And nobody knew what kind of a football team the Chiefs were going to be. So the Chiefs, they bring in Thomas Jones, they bring back Casey Wakeman, they bring in Ryan Lilja, who was a longtime Indianapolis Colts offensive lineman. And I'm thinking, hey, this offense has a really good chance. Thomas Jones also joined the Chiefs offense. So that offense really had an opportunity. I'll never forget, they drafted Eric Berry, they drafted Dexter McCluster. Jamal Charles has that big run to put the Chiefs on the scoreboard. Tony Moiaki, a rookie, scored a touchdown. And then Dexter McCluster had a punt return that he took to the house. Javier Arenas, another rookie, he should have had a punt return touchdown also, but Andy Studebaker missed the last person he needed to block. Studebaker made up for it on the next punt return, and that allowed McCluster to run all the way for a touchdown. And the Chiefs just kind of set the tone at that point. They started the season 3-0. They were the last unbeaten team in the NFL that season. So that's, you hear those things and it sounds like a good year for Kansas City. But that 2010 season and really the entire Todd Haley era, dude, the Todd Haley era was like season 4 of Last Chance U. I don't know if you guys have seen Last Chance U. It's a series that covers junior college athletes. I think the show is now defunct and extinct with the dinosaurs, but seasons 1 and 2 was East Mississippi. Seasons 3 and 4 were in Independence, Kansas. And that was by Coach Jason Brown. Jason Brown's been on this podcast before many years ago. He doesn't like me anymore because I criticized someone he claims to have coached personally, and that is Dan Sorensen. Anyway, so he holds that against me, and I think because of that, because of the Dan Sorensen criticism from all of Chiefs fans, he always has like a negative opinion about Mahomes. Like you never hear him say anything positive about Mahomes. But anyway, that's the point. The point is, seasons 3 and 4 of Last Chance U are seriously some of the most insane must-watch television on Netflix. Season 4 was basically, I mean, that team went to hell. They only won like 1 or 2 games. Jason Brown fighting with his own assistant coaches, fighting with his own players, fighting with opposing coaches that he used to work with. I mean, it was basically Hard Knocks with a lot of drama injected into it. That was the Todd Haley era. I mean, think of all the things. I remember when Todd Haley first got the job to come to Kansas City, that entire offseason, everybody was talking about that blow up he had on the sideline between himself and Anquan Boldin. Remember that when the Cardinals, because Haley was the offensive coordinator of the Cardinals, and the Cardinals had that really special run where they almost won the Super Bowl, epic Super Bowl between the Cardinals and the Steelers. That pick six right before halftime was essentially the difference maker. But that was a team that had Kurt Warner, and they had 3 1,000-yard receivers: Larry Fitzgerald, Steve Breaston, Anquan Boldin. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, and this is a little bit of a surprise to me, because you would think that in this pass-heavy era, we would have seen more 1,000-yard receivers, 3 1,000-yard receivers on the same team. But that's the last time we've seen a team with 3 1,000-yard receivers. It was Fitzgerald, Boldin, and Steve Breaston. Breaston ended up playing for the Chiefs, I believe, in 2011. 2011 or 2012, I can't remember. But that was talked about all year long, is Todd Haley's temper and how that was going to be handled in Kansas City. Well, unfortunately, it was off to... I remember watching a preseason game, and Todd Haley was frustrated with something, and you just see him on the sidelines go, just dropping an F-bomb. It's like, what's going on? Like, how... We've seen coaches yell before. I'm not saying we've never seen that from Belichick or any of these other head coaches in the NFL, but it was just constant with Todd Haley. I'll never forget the first game in the Todd Haley era in the regular season. It was the Chiefs against the Ravens. Matt Castle could not make his debut because he was injured. He ended up making his debut the following weekend. Brody Croyle was the starting quarterback, and I guess Croyle was changing. And I had Brody Croyle on the podcast last year, and I forgot to ask him this. Shame on me. But Brody Croyle audibles. Haley calls a timeout to pull Croyle to the sideline, and he goes, snap the fucking ball. Jesus Christ, bro. Like, listen, I'm not the best at reading lips. You can tell what Todd Haley is saying in that moment there. It is colorful language. He is lashing out at Brody Croyle in this one. He called a timeout just to do that, which is great. I'll never forget that same season. Remember Bobby Wade, the wide receiver who came in from Minnesota? Bobby Wade dropped a wide open pass thrown by Matt Castle. Would have been an easy 75-yard touchdown to open up the game against Denver. And Bobby Wade dropped it. And Haley just had this outburst going after Bobby Wade on the sidelines. And then there were two Chiefs assistant coaches going at it on the sidelines. The Charlie Weiss fallout in the 2010 playoff game, I mean, they kind of covered it up by saying that Weiss went to Florida to go coach with his son because his son was going to be a student assistant. Ended up being a student assistant for the Jayhawks when Charlie Weiss accepted that job. The way he fired Chan Gailey during the preseason, this is Todd Haley's first preseason, and he fires the offensive coordinator. And then a year later, Chan Gailey has the Buffalo head coaching job, and Buffalo destroys Kansas City. Haley doesn't even, or no, I think that was a year later. But in 2010, the Chiefs beat the Bills, a winless Bills team, in overtime as time expired. And Todd Haley does not even shake hands with Chan Gailey after the game. I'll never forget Josh McDaniels in 2010, where the Broncos blew out the Chiefs, and Haley, wagged his finger at Josh McDaniels. And some like mismanagement. I'll never forget one game against the Raiders before halftime. The Chiefs have no timeouts, but for whatever reason, they decide to run a play in the middle of the field rather than a play near the sidelines to go out of bounds to stop the clock. And they weren't able to get a field goal out of that. There was like no sense of urgency from the players either going to the line of scrimmage. It's like, how is this team even prepared to play football? He allegedly flipped off a fan. By the way, this one I completely forgot. Someone brought it to my attention. Remember Derek Johnson was in the dog? Derek freaking Johnson, a guy who led the NFL, led the Chiefs all time in tackles. Dude, the Todd Haley era was weird. And I think Todd Haley's a smart-minded coach. Don't get me wrong. And I think he had a good vision. I really do. I was excited to see what the Chiefs were going to do, especially in 2010 when they got Charlie Weiss and Romeo Crennel as coordinators. Dude, that Chiefs team was good in 2010. They moved in the right direction. But unfortunately, just there were so many bad things happening off the field behind closed doors. And I'm sure there was a lot that we don't even know about. And it's just nobody wanted to go to work for Todd Haley. The assistants didn't want to. The players didn't want to. I remember a game against Seattle. That was the one where Dwayne Bell had 3 touchdowns in 2010. And Todd Haley was mic'd up. And I guess Jamal Charles got a rushing touchdown in that game. And after that touchdown, he's kind of shaking his head no. And I guess the wrong play call was said. I don't know what happened, but it didn't go as planned. Now they still scored a touchdown. And rather than, celebrating, he just goes, guys, that's living on the edge. So I don't know, man. I just get this ever since, Matt Castle shared that story. I get this idea that the players did not have fun playing football under Todd Haley. And listen, I'm not saying Matt Castle, would have been a much better solution if there was better leadership from a coaching standpoint. I mean, he bears some of the responsibility for the struggles that year as well. But it was just, I don't know, something about the Todd Haley era. It was hard for the guys to want to go to work for him, which surprised me a few years later because Haley went back to being an offensive coordinator. He went to Pittsburgh. And I remember Ben Roethlisberger, I think it was Roethlisberger and Tomlin, who were barking at each other. And Haley was the voice of reason, trying to separate them, trying to get everyone to come out. It's like, wait a minute. I do not recall that Todd Haley. Where was that Todd Haley in Kansas City? Listen, I think it's human nature. Like if you go back in time, if you could go back in time and do things over for certain things in your life, would you? Yeah, of course. You learn things that you didn't know before and you wish you could do a better job. I'd like to think that Todd Haley would have done things much differently during his time in Kansas City. I think he still holds a vendetta against Kansas City because I remember, I think it was in 2020 when the Chiefs were looking to go back-to-back for the first time before they actually went back-to-back. That was the year they lost to Tampa in the Super Bowl. And I remember Todd Haley was on ESPN radio. That was back when Russillo. Gosh, I can't think of the radio host who was hosting mid-mornings on ESPN radio. Anyway, I can't remember the name, but they were interviewing Todd Haley, asking about Kansas City, and they said, "What do you think, Patrick Mahomes would mean to Kansas City if they can go back to back that year?" And Todd Haley's answer, word for word, was, "They're going to build a statue for him." And Todd Haley doesn't say anything else, and I think the hosts are waiting for him to continue his commentary, and they're like, "That's it? That's all you're going to say?" Like, you're an analyst for ESPN. Like, come on, you got to give us something. Because Todd Haley does do a lot of analysis stuff now. But it's like, I think he just holds a vendetta against Kansas City, even though the people who were there, except for Clark, I mean, they're all gone now. But I guess he was just unhappy with the way things panned out at the time. I don't know, man. It's unfortunate because I do think the Todd Haley era had potential. But you got to have guys that want to battle for you. I mean, Romeo Crennel was a bad head coach, but you're not going to hear anyone say a bad word about Crennel because the players loved playing for him. Now, that's not enough for a coach to keep his job. You still have to show positive results. But I don't know, man. The Todd Haley era was just it's a story. That there needs to be a 30 for 30 on that. You know how Hard Knocks does in seasons now on HBO? If Hard Knocks signed a 3-year deal with the Chiefs to cover them off season, preseason, training camp, and in season, oh boy, Hard Knocks would have had a lot of gold footage there to work with. I mean, that would have been a hell of a show to watch. That's that, though. I did want to get into the Bengals and Trey Hendrickson a little later on because I know I've been going for a long time. Wow, you guys have a lot of things because I've been talking for a long time. So I'm going to read your guys' comments and questions, and then I'll go back to my comments about the Bengals because I do think they are probably the most intriguing football team going into the offseason. John says, "Good job, Raiders, keeping the fourth place mentality." Yeah. Look, it's just, here's the thing. you have three really good teams in that division right now: the Chiefs, the Broncos, and the Chargers. From a football standpoint, the Raiders do have a difficult decision. I mean, they've got a difficult job here. Like, how do you put yourself in a situation to where you're not just a fourth team? How do you prove that you can compete with the others? Is Metcalf to the Raiders? I think maybe. DK Metcalf is going to cost a lot, though. They want a first and a third, and Metcalf wants $30 million. Oh, boy. I'm not saying he's not worth it, but if you really want a wide receiver, I mean, this year's crop of free agent wide receivers is pretty strong. I mean, if you really want a guy with a lot of speed, you can go get Hollywood Brown for a much cheaper price. Not that I want Hollywood on the Raiders. I would like to see the Chiefs give him one more chance, but it's funny because some people took that very seriously. Guys, things like that are really meant to be just for comic relief. Those things are never meant to be taken seriously, but some people take them seriously. What are we going to do about tight end? Should we draft one or perhaps go after Evan Ingram? Oh, yeah, because he did get released. I don't know if I think the Chiefs are going to have a very quiet free agent offseason. Maybe they draft one. I mean, they have Noah Gray, who they really like. And you guys don't need me to tell you that. They also have Jared Wiley, who they like as well. Obviously, had that injury. I assume they would need to get another tight end. My guess is whoever looks really good in training camp could be a fourth tight end, whether they give Jody Fortson another opportunity. And I like Jody Fortson. I think he's been a good depth player, but man, he gets injured a lot, which is just unfortunate because injuries do hurt careers. They really do. But we'll see what they do about that. I can see Suamataia at guard. Yeah, I don't know. Because Suamataia did play some guard. And correction, I did say earlier, Mike Caliendo played guard. No, he didn't. After the first series. Suamataia did. And he was not really that good in that Week 18 game. A lot of you guys are saying no on Evan Ingram. Yeah, Tevin Jenkins, that name I've thrown out there, that's certainly a possibility, depending on his asking price. Do we think DJ Humphries, I assume that you're talking about DJ Humphries, is done, or do we think he tried to rush back too quickly from the knee injury? Yeah, whenever someone is dealing with an injury and they re-aggravate the injury, or they just get hurt somewhere else, or they don't do as well, I think the speculation is always out there. Did they get rushed back into things? I don't know. He was medically cleared. So whoever medically cleared him, I mean, they know a lot more than I do. I don't know. That's a really good question, John. You would think with a full offseason, maybe there's something that could be accomplished there. But this is not a chance to give opportunities to guys who have failed. And listen, if we're just being upfront and honest here, DJ Humphries played 2 games, and both those games were really bad showings. That Week 18 game, I mean, yeah, that was a preseason game for the Chiefs. For the Broncos, they were fighting to get into the playoffs. That's a team that led the NFL in sacks. So that was a great test for DJ Humphries, and he was not very good at it. So I'm not sure. Nor is that moving from center to guard is easier from moving from tackle to guard. Yeah, that's a really good point, Joey. I never thought of it that way. That is a good point. Yeah, his leadership's definitely going to be missed for sure. A couple of you guys are mentioning Nick Bolton here. Look, I agree with you guys. I mean, Nick Bolton's a great football player, but you can't keep everybody. You just can't. Listen, who else is learning that you can't keep everyone right now? The Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, the Bengals right now, with their situation, they have 4 players who are absolutely great. Joe Burrow, obviously statistically was the best quarterback last year. Jamar Chase, Triple Crown wide receiver. Clearly no one's better than him at the wide receiver position. And Trey Hendrickson just led the NFL in sacks last year. And this is a team, by the way, that, I mean, they've got two great wide receivers. They've got a great quarterback. They've got a great defensive end. But after that, who is really worth a damn on this football team? I mean, this is a team that has almost $52 million in cap space, and they might not keep everyone. The Chiefs are a team that's trying to get under the cap. They traded Joe Tooney because they're under the cap, or excuse me, over the cap. I mean, they have elite players across the board on offense and defense. That's not an issue for Kansas City. I mean, yeah, they pay a lot of guys. Well, they end up winning a lot of football games. They end up winning Super Bowls. And if they don't win them, well, they reach the Super Bowl or the AFC Championship game at the very least. In order to be good, you're going to have to spend money. The Bengals, I don't know what they're doing. They tagged T. Higgins 2 years in a row. They're probably going to go into a second straight season where Jamar Chase might not show up for any of the offseason workouts or training camp. And now you have Trey Hendrickson, which, by the way, the Bengals defense, bottom of the barrel defense. And the one player on that defense who is worth a damn led the NFL in sacks. And they might trade him? Listen, him receiving permission, rather, to talk to other teams, that doesn't spell the end of it. But boy, after the contract Max Crosby got, it does seem like an uphill battle to keep him. Because what does Jamar Chase want? He wants to be the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. So we're talking, what, probably $40 million? Because Crosby is the highest paid non-quarterback. So not only does Trey Hendrickson want more money than Jamar Chase, because he just led the league in sacks and has had the most sacks the last 3 years, but Jamar Chase also wants more money than Max Crosby. Yeah, you're not going to be able to afford all those guys. I'm telling you right now, if the Bengals were smart, and obviously the Bengals love Joe Burrow, Bengals fans, Houday Nation, they think Joe Burrow is the best quarterback in the NFL. Unless I suppose you have a valid reason to think that. Once upon a time, he beat Patrick Mahomes 3 times in one calendar year, but that was 3 years ago. Now, yeah, he just led the NFL in touchdowns and yards. What if you were to trade T. Higgins and Jamar Chase for viable offensive linemen, something that Joe Burrow does not have? What if you kept Trey Hendrickson and built a better defense? Because if you have a good defense, if you've got a great offensive line, Burrow can throw to anybody. And don't get me wrong, Chase and Higgins are great, but you have to protect your quarterback. And this Bengals team, with $51 million in cap room, they can't figure out a way to keep Higgins, Chase, and Hendrickson. And it's funny to me because Bengals fans are lecturing Chiefs fans on salary cap management. I think Bengals fans need to give their lectures on salary cap management to Mike Brown, the owner of the Bengals. That's who you should be talking to, not the Chiefs fans. Listen, I don't know what's going to happen to this Bengals football team. This is a football team that's capable of making a deep run. No question about it. They've got a great quarterback, the best quarterback statistically speaking from the year before. They've got easily the best wide receiver duo in the NFL, and it's not even close. They've got the best pass rusher in the NFL, but they're not paying those 3 guys. They're messing around, tagging Higgins 2 years in a row, not giving Chase the contract, and because they've waited too long, they have to pay Chase even more. They have to pay Hendrickson even more if they want to keep them. It's a really bad situation. Listen, the Chiefs struggle. They're like near the bottom when it comes to cap space. The Bengals have a bunch of money, and they're struggling. They're not even paying their guys. I mean, at least the Raiders can make Max Crosby happy. Yes, the Raiders suck. That's not breaking news. Even Raiders fans will tell you that. But at least that franchise can make Max Crosby happy by opening up the wallet, opening up the checkbook, and saying, hey, I know you've been very loyal to us considering we don't do very well. Here's a shit ton of money for you. You're the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. The Bengals are they're just giving 2 middle fingers to all these guys. If there's an organization in the NFL that has $52 million in cap room and they have Higgins, Chase, and Hendrickson, they would be fighting tooth and nail to do whatever it took to keep those guys. I mean, listen, overpaying for Orlando Brown doesn't help. He led the NFL in pressures allowed his first year with the Bengals, and then he got injured his second year and ended up reverting back to last year, allowing 12 pressures in the last 3 games. I mean, that team has a lot to figure out. But hey, at least they beat Patrick Mahomes 3 times in one calendar year. Yeah, guys, whoever is talking about how they read an article or a post about Bolton resigning, there's a shit ton of fake news out there. I mean, there are a lot of Chiefs pages with fake news. I see pages from other teams, fan pages that always spread fake news. There are people creating fake Brittany Mahomes quotes, blaming the refs and all this shit, and people are believing it. By the way, I'm sorry, but some of you guys on the internet are dumb. There's clearly it's an AI photo of Patrick, Brittany, and their youngest daughter, Golden, and that this is the face reveal. Here's their baby. You can clearly tell it's AI because there's just way too much enhancement in the photos. And all the people are commenting, OMG, she's so beautiful. It's fake, you morons. I mean, listen, I don't understand how Meta allows so much fake news to slide, but they allow it. It's kind of a shame. Bills fans were furious that the Bills cut him. He was really supposed to be the next great thing. Who was supposed to be the next great thing? Jenkins? I don't know what that comment's referring to. Sorry, Callie. Hate to see Justin Reed go. Yeah, me too. I mean, Justin Reed, Nick Boyle. I said this last offseason to you guys. I said, you got to pull off the three-peat because if you do that, the turnover would probably be easier to take. Now, listen, the Chiefs still have won multiple Super Bowls, so it's not like it's the worst thing ever. At least they've won games. They've won championships. But you're going to see a lot of fan favorites move on, man. That's the way sports work out sometimes. Yeah, there are some people who think that Sanders is going to drop. Some people think Ward might drop. Oh, that was Shador. Okay, well, my bad. Yeah, Gino had a couple of good years, Alex. I don't know, man. Darnold and Rodgers will be signing. One of them goes to the Giants. Look, I don't think Aaron Rodgers is done playing, but at the same time, it's like, who wants him right now? Like, he's not worth the headache. I get it. He probably is going to convince Devontae Adams to follow him, so that's kind of a nice package deal. I don't know, man. I mean, Rodgers was a headache with the Jets. I don't know. Coyle had to be lost. Yeah, I mean, listen, he wasn't good. And Coyle was on the podcast last year, and he was open and honest about a lot of things. I think he deserved a little bit of help. But yeah, he definitely struggled during his time with the Chiefs. Rodgers ends up on the Dolphins. Not a terrible prediction, but do the Dolphins have the money for that? That's what I'm wondering. No, there's no way the Titans would do it. With the number 1 pick, you've got to just pick the quarterback. I know this year is maybe not as great of a draft class for quarterbacks compared to past years, but I think one of those guys would have to work out for you. So whoever you believe in the most. Matt had that story on Todd Haley for a while. I would imagine it's just that era of Chiefs football, and I'll die on this sword here. I think that era had potential. I really do, especially if there was a way where, if in a world where Todd Haley was a calm, relaxed guy and everyone was willing to play for him, I think Charlie Weiss and Romeo Crennel would have stayed. Romeo Crennel stayed, obviously, but I think Charlie Weiss would have been willing to stay. I don't know, man. That was just, I was excited for Weiss and Crennel as coordinators. I think Crennel played a big hand in helping Derek Johnson play much better football. Tom Bahali played much better. I mean, a lot of those guys like Justin Houston, Eric Berry, I think those guys really, Brandon Flowers, their game did elevate because of Romeo Crennel. I really believe that. I'm glad you like that. I don't create that. I don't know how that works. I did see someone comment once, long time ago, saying that they were hearing impaired and they don't see captions. I don't know how that stuff works. See, if I say my name right now, Farzine Vasugian, I guarantee you they butchered that. So I have no idea how that captioning works out for Facebook and Meta. But hopefully, if you're in a place where you can't hear well, or if you can't have your volume too loud, hopefully the captions are at the very least accurate. Oh man, I'll never forget the game where the Chiefs were playing the Patriots and both Brody Croyle and Tom Brady got injured in that game. So that game went from Brody Croyle versus Tom Brady to Damon Heward versus Matt Castle. It's so weird because Heward was he played for the Patriots. He is a former teammate of Tom Brady. He was Tom Brady's backup, and Castle ended up playing for the Chiefs. Like, man, Scott, I don't think they're going to do much. I think they're still trying to figure out how to open up some cap space. But I think at the end of the day, they'll figure that out, but they'll make a couple of moves. If you can get yourself a good left tackle, a reliable left guard, unless you think he's on the roster, and maybe even get a speedy wide receiver, maybe a Tyler Lockett, maybe you bring back Hollywood Brown, I think it'll be that would be considered a win in my book for the Chiefs. If they can find a way to bring back Tershawn Wharton and Hollywood Brown and sign Ronnie Stanley, I'd be happy with that. I'd be very happy with that. Yeah, that was. It's just the amount of blow-ups on the sidelines. Do I want DK Metcalf? Of course. But for a first and a third and $30 million, I mean, if the Chiefs traded Joe Thuney because he was a cap casualty guy, I mean, how are you going to afford DK Metcalf? Yeah, I mean, they did the Herm Edwards, the second to last Herm Edwards season, was it? Yeah. That was fine. Wasn't anything special. Todd Haley on Hard Knocks would have been gold. That would have been must-watch TV. Yeah, this is a good question. Will Nico Remigio get more time next season? I think he's gonna get a chance. I think he showcased some of his skill set as a returner and as a receiver a little bit. I think, yeah. And by the way, the Chiefs have always had good things to say about Nico Remigio. Last year, I remember Andy Reid, Dave Tobe as a special teams coordinator, when talking about return specialists, he had a lot of good things to say about Nico Remigio. So I would imagine that Nico Remigio is someone who the Chiefs would seriously give opportunities to this upcoming season in terms of OTAs, training camp, the preseason. I would expect to see a lot of Nico Remigio in those games, the preseason games, that is. And if he does well in those, that could maybe translate into opportunities on the 53. So we'll see. Despite the Super Bowl loss, thank God we got Reid compared to those bad coaches in decades. It's a good point. Listen, I think they need to trade Higgins, and even Chase, not because they're bad, they're great, obviously, but if Burrow is as great as advertised, and I think he is, shouldn't you give him an offensive line and a defense? Because if you give Burrow an offensive line, he can throw to anybody. And if your defense doesn't even need to be great, just average would even suffice. You have that's a team that can make a deep run for a championship. I mean, he would have to work a lot of magic with restructures and all those things, man. I hope so. I hope you're right, Joshua, but that's going to be a tough one. I mean, that is going to be tough indeed. Yeah, I mean, that kind of cap space for the Bengals and I just don't know realistically what their plan is. Like, what's the goal? By the way, guys, real quickly here, I do want to let you know before we go any further here, and let me get the right picture. There we go. Now I just need to put it on the screen for you guys. If you guys are in Kansas City, a lot of you guys live in Kansas City, of course, but if you're going to be visiting in late April, there is a TKO takeover coming to Kansas City. We have PBR, the Kansas City Outlaws versus the World on April the 24th. UFC Fight Night on April the 26th. Khalil Roundtree, a fighter who I remember watching on The Ultimate Fighter back in 2016. He is going to be main eventing in this one. And then WWE Raw coming to Kansas City, April the 28th. I think that's going to be about a week after WrestleMania. So that's going to be part of the WrestleMania aftermath. And there's usually some good things that come with that. Big TKO weekend in Kansas City, the Outlaws, UFC, and WWE Monday Night Raw. And if you guys want to get any of the action, check them out in person. Go to SeatGeek.com, get your tickets from there. And if you're a new customer, put in my promo code FARZINE and save $20 off your first purchase. TKO Takeover coming to Kansas City in late April. Humphreys, when completely back to game shape, should be better. Yeah, maybe. But here's my thing. Look, you can talk about DJ Humphreys getting a full offseason and getting healthier. You can talk about Kingsley Suamataia maybe getting a second chance. My question to everyone is this. Do the Chiefs have time to be messing around and give second chances to people at left tackle? I mean, I don't know. I think if you're going to trade Trey Smith, then you got a lot of work to do, because that's a massive hole at left guard now. And I understand why the move had to happen. It's a business. I get, by the way, I see these comments. Chiefs fans are like, why are the Chiefs letting Tyreek Hill and L'Jarius Sneed and Joe Thuney go? Well, if you understand how football works, you can't pay everyone. Ask Cincinnati this. They've got they keep trading these players and they're still winning football games. Now, I will say, in my opinion, because I said at the time, Tyreek Hill was a major loss, but not enough to start losing a bunch of games. I said that at the time. I will say that Joe Thuney is the biggest loss of those three guys that you traded between Sneed, Hill, and Thuney. That's a big hole at left guard. They've got to fix that. If you're going to do that, if you're going to trade Thuney, then you better go all in on Ronnie Stanley. Yeah, more. And by the way, Scott, I think I saw your other question too about running backs. I don't know free agent wise what running back the Chiefs would bring back. I'd like to see Kareem Hunt come back with a full off season because he was on the shelf too, recovering from an injury, and the Chiefs called him. Cam Scatterboo, obviously a lot of people like what they saw from him in the college football playoff game against Texas. You also have Devin Neal, who a lot of people think could be a good day 2 draft pick, maybe an early day 3 draft pick. They've certainly got options. I think there will be more in the draft. Oh, you're talking about Ariza. Yeah, I got you, Kaylee. My bad. Yeah. Because listen, I understand from a PR standpoint, that whole thing was not a good look for the Bills. Here's the other thing. If you're the Bills, what do you do? Like because if he stays, the coach is going to be asked about it every single day. It's a shitty situation, man. And listen, is it possible that athletes find a way to get things to go in their favor in some of these cases? Sure. I don't doubt that. But at the end of the day, through these legal matters, he was found to have not done anything wrong. Accusing someone of these kinds of things, I mean, that's pretty serious. That's serious. You can't be doing that shit. Like, there needs to be consequences for that. Falsely accusing people and putting them through court and everything. Sign Joey Bosa, dude, that'd be great. But again, the money, that's a big part of all of these things. Yeah, man, a lot of you guys want Nick Bolton back, and I get it. But you got a Jayhawk logo on, and you're saying that, all right? Now, listen, we can all set our college fandoms aside in the NFL, right? But guys, I'm just letting you all know, man, he might have played his last game. Not because the Chiefs hate him. They just don't have the money for it. And Bolton deserves to get paid, man. Go get your money. I wish it was with Kansas City, but I don't think Kansas City has it. I mean, if they pay him, then you're not going to get your left tackle unless you get it through the draft. And I prefer the Chiefs don't do that in the draft because they've already tried a couple of times and it has not worked out. Unless that kid from Oregon, they feel he might be good, but I don't know, man. We will be doing the vets, and they get 1-year deals that work for the Pats. I think the thing that works for the Patriots for a long time is they try to keep their offensive linemen for as long as possible. Who was Brady's best pass catcher? A wide receiver and tight end. Who was his best pass catcher? Gronk. I think we can agree Gronk. Edelman was good. Danny Amendola was also good. Excuse me, when he was with the Patriots. Wasn't so good outside of New England. Tim Brown was not bad. I don't think Tim Brown really got the credit he truly deserved during his time in the NFL. Hold on. Was it Tim Brown or am I thinking of a different? Yeah, Tim Brown. Yeah, Tim Brown. That's what I was thinking of. I thought maybe I was confusing him for somebody else. Or was it Troy Brown I was thinking of? Anyway, one of the Browns. Brady's had a lot of great players to throw to over the years. But what's been the constant thing that they had for so long there? A great offensive line. And they would go out there and sign second tier, third tier free agents. And as long as they had Brady and a good offensive line, everything else just kind of fell into place. Veach needs to trade those lower picks, the 7th, 6th, 5th, 4th, and a 2nd pick, an O lineman with 2. What trade proposal are you trying to discuss here, Ogle? I mean, you're basically wanting them to trade everything outside of everything in day 3. I don't know, man. Yeah, Matt Lye was a great offensive lineman for the Patriots. I mean, hold on. Who was on the Patriots All Dynasty team? Let's look at that. Where is that Patriots list? There it is. The All Dynasty team. Oh, by the way, who was that wide receiver? Troy Brown. I said Tim Brown. My bad. Oh, Wes Welker. I forgot about Wes Welker. Yeah, he was also a really good wide receiver. But my point is, Brady's had a lot of different guys. They've changed pass catchers over the years. Troy Brown, Welker, Randy Moss, Julian Edelman, Gronk, Daniel Graham even played for the Patriots, and they really liked him for a bit before Gronk got there. But yeah, as far as their offensive lineman goes, Nate Solder, I remember him, Matt Light, Sebastian Vollmer, Joe Tooney, of course, who we're very familiar with in Kansas City, Dan Coppin, Logan Mankins. I mean, they've had a lot of great offensive linemen, and they've kept a lot of those guys for so many years. I mean, you look at their defense, they've had so many different guys over the years. Guys like Richard Seymour, Vince Wilfork, who ended up going to the Raiders, Mike Vrabel, Rob Ninkovich, Gerard Mayo, Dante Hightower, Teddy Bruschi, and then Ty Law, Asante Samuel, Stephon Gilmore. Remember when Stephon Gilmore was the defensive player of the year? Remember that? Didn't J.C. Jackson also play for the Patriots? Yeah. So they've had a lot of good players come and go, but the offensive line, they've been able to keep a lot of the good offensive linemen for a long period of time. Matt Light played from 2001 to 2011. Soldier from 2011 to 2017. Mankins from 2005 to 2013. That's a damn long time. Coppin from 2003 to 11. Like, they managed to keep a lot of the great offensive linemen for a long time. So pay your quarterback, pay your offensive lineman, and then as far as the rest of the positions go, expect a lot of turnover there, and that's fine. Look at the running backs. Corey Dillon, Kevin Falk, James White. Like, they've changed a lot of running backs over the years, and that's fine with them because as long as they had Brady and a good offensive line, they were willing to go through a new cycle with the other positions, and they made it work out at the end of the day. That was the Patriots model. That's why they won 6 Super Bowls in 18 years. Patriots had great cameramen stealing plays. Yeah, they had that also. I mean, listen, I know a lot of Patriots fans were upset with the lack of evidence from Spygate, and then it led to them like getting all those hefty punishments. But remember the year before the Bengals got Burrow with the number 1 pick, the Bengals obviously had the worst record in the NFL, and the Patriots were caught filming the Bengals, filming hand signals, all those things that they didn't need to do. And you even have like security, you can hear their voices in the backgrounds. They're like, what are you doing? And the cameraman's like, hey, we can just delete this and act like nothing existed, right? It's like, dude, with technology today, back then even, with cloud technology, you record something, just because you delete it doesn't mean it's gone. It can be out there somewhere. Like, come on, you can't do that. And you're filming the worst team in the NFL. Why? That was wild. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's how the Patriots dominated for so many years. Is they kept the offensive line intact for as long as they could, to protect their franchise quarterback. And then they just try to draft real well. The Chiefs have been drafting real well. Now, their last couple of drafts haven't been home run drafts like 2021 and 2022, but they still found some great players. Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy. I mean, they've been able to find some good players in those drafts. So hopefully they can have a draft similar to 2022, because they need that this year really badly, because I don't think they're going to do much in free agency this year. I think moving forward from now on, you paid Creed Humphrey, you're about to pay Trey Smith. Try to find the next Joe Tooney. Find the best left tackle you can find. Because if you can do that, Patrick Mahomes will be happy in Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes proved that he could win without Tyreek Hill. Remember when Tyreek got traded? The Chiefs were supposed to have that downfall, right? They didn't. Because the Chiefs still had a good offensive line. The offensive tackles were bad. But if they had a better group of offensive tackles, Mahomes' numbers would have been even better, and he would have won MVP in a bigger landslide than it already was. So I just want that. I just want Brett Veach to do that, because if he does, if he brings in the right offensive lineman, which for the most part he has, then I think Mahomes is going to be successful, and you'll be able to maximize his potential for as long as he's in Kansas City. That's what I hope they do. All right, guys, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you all for joining me for this edition of the Red Friday Live Chat. My name is Farzin Vasugian. If you guys enjoyed this, please give it a like, share the live stream, let your friends know about the Red Friday live chat. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys enjoy the rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend. I'm out.